Hello, I am Zach, and welcome to Elevate Youth Online.
Hi Elevate, we want to welcome you to Elevate Youth Online.
Before we get started, we want to let you know about a few quick things.
Number one, be sure to follow us on social media. We have YouTube, which is where you're at now, Instagram and Facebook at elevateyouth.kc.
Number two, share this video with your friends and put it on your social media page so even more people can see.
All right, you guys probably heard me talk about this last one quite a bit, but it's so important. Number three, join an Elevate tribe. You can do so by emailing youth@journeykc.com, and we'll be doing tribes right after this message tonight.
Hey guys, I'm here today and I'm talking about joy. So, as most of you know, my middle name is Joy, and I used to get so annoyed at that because people would say like, I have a word for you and I feel like your word is just joy. And I would get so annoyed because I would be like, oh yeah, that's just because that's my middle name. And I would just get so mad. And after a while, I started to see that as like, it's a label for me. Like I was like, okay, I have to be Joy. Because my middle name is Joy, people always say that, so I have to be Joy. So it just became like a mask. Like if something bad happened, I'd be like, yay, I'm happy, see, because I'm Joy. But on the inside, I wasn't joyful. I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling the actual joy. It was just a mask. Then I realized that I'm not supposed to be Joy because joy is a choice, not a destiny. That leads to my first point. Joy is a choice. In James 1, verse 2, it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, through trials of various times." So, through the trials, choose joy. That leads me to my second point, which is happiness and joy are not at all the same thing. Joy is when you're going through something tough and you choose to be positive even though the world would choose to be negative. Happiness is whenever you're happy because of your circumstance. Like say somebody gives you a cookie and then you get happy because somebody gave you a cookie. Joy is whenever something doesn't happen to you or you're in a dark, hard time and you choose to be happy even through that. Every day I ask God to give me a chance to choose joy. It's a very dangerous prayer if you think about it. So only pray it if you mean it. And in Psalm 16:11 it says, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is a fullness of joy." Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Hey Elevate, it's Kelsey here, and the fruit of the Spirit I will be talking about is gentleness. Now, I think for a lot of people, they just kind of skim over that one, like, oh, gentleness, okay, whatever, it's useless, or that's like weakness, but it's not. In reality, gentleness requires an insane amount of confidence and strength, because to have gentleness is to be so confident and who you are in God that you do not need to prove yourself by controlling others. To be gentle is to be utterly convinced of the identity you have in God, that you don't need to use force or undue harshness in your dealings with people or situations because you know who you are and the authority that you've been given. In Proverbs 15:1, it says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." So here is an example of the power of gentleness. The power of gentleness can, like it says, turn away wrath. It can change the atmosphere of a conversation. It can change the direction of a conversation. I have a lot of friends, who are in customer service, whether that's Chick-fil-A or Hy-Vee. But I've heard story time and time again where a customer comes up, they're really mad. For whatever reason, something happened. They're super frustrated and they're not afraid to show it. And they're just kind of going all out, getting all over, just yelling at the employee. And the employee chooses to respond with gentleness, and not to match the level of intensity that the customer is using, in frustration and anger, but the employee chooses to respond with gentleness. And I've heard it so many times where when they choose to respond that way, it literally changes the atmosphere. It changes that customer. And by the end of the conversation, the customer is peaceable and understanding and listening, and it ends on a good note, because the employee responded to their wrath with gentleness. And so that is a real life example of the power of gentleness. If you have gentleness, you can change the atmosphere. You can change the hearts of people. You can change the world around you in situations by responding out of gentleness. But the biggest example of gentleness is Jesus. In Matthew 11:29, he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." So Jesus himself calls himself gentle. And for me personally, God has been revealing that he is gentle to me this past year or so. He's just been showing me time and time again, whenever I am worked up, frustrated, tense, he responds with gentleness, and it's blowing me away, really, just how gentle God is with me, and it's changing me. It really is. It's changing me by God responding with this such intentionality and this confidence and this love through his gentleness. It's changing my heart, and I want to be more gentle because I want to be more like him. And I want to challenge you guys to take some time tonight or this week to ask God to show you a part of himself. Ask him to show you one of the fruits of the Spirit in himself. Because when you see an attribute in God, whether that be gentleness or joy or love, it makes you want to be like that too, because you see it in him. And so I challenge you guys to do that, because when you see it in God, you'll want to be more like that, because we want to be more like Jesus.
Good evening. I'm Bob Van Camp. I work with the youth and stuff at Elevate. And I was asked to pick a word out of the fruits of the Spirit. So I picked kindness, thinking it was pretty simple. And after this last week of violence and the riots and everything going on, it made it a little bit rough to really think about what kindness is without getting angry and upset and at the things that people are doing out there that's crazy and primarily stupid. But I just, a little definition is just kindness is doing good for others. Giving to the needy, opening a door for somebody, smiling is really the simple thing. acknowledging somebody, when they've done good, or just acknowledging them for who they are. And just primarily just doing good, for somebody. And even if they treat you bad, you treat them with kindness. A couple scriptures that really makes you think about being kind and stuff, because we're supposed to walk like Jesus, and Jesus was very kind to others. In Luke chapter 6, it talks about love for enemies. I'm going to start with verse 35. It says, "But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." And we go on to 2 Timothy. This is our duty as Christians, as believers. In 2 Timothy, it talks about workmen approved by God. I'm going to start with 22, verse 22, chapter 2. "Flee the evil desires of youth, and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because you know they produce quarrels. And the Lord's servant must not quarrel. Instead, he must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. Those who oppose him, he must gently instruct, in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth, and that they will come to their senses and escape from the trap of the devil, who has taken them captive to do his will." Working as a security guard one night, I worked at an apartment complex, and I always seen this one fella, and he didn't like policemen and stuff, but I would acknowledge him. I'd nod my head or smile or wave, whatever. Well, he never acknowledged back. He just looked at me. Well, one night, he decided to shoot at his girlfriend right in front of me, and we were a car width apart from each other, and it was a time that I had my gun drawn and he had his, but I didn't know that he was the shooter. It seemed like a distant stare of about 15 minutes. It was probably a total of 3 seconds. But he had got in the car and took off, and I called it in, not knowing that he was the shooter. So anyway, long story short, I looked about it, looked back on the situation and everything, and it was a time that God shared with me the fact that because I was kind to him, it made a difference at this time when we were looking at each other, because we both could be dead right now, or one of us could be dead. But since I was kind, he decided to go a different direction. But that's what we need to be. Not that it's going to change your life in the future, but maybe it'll change the life of somebody else in the future. Give them a chance to know who God is. So that's why we need to be kind. Good day.
Hello, Elevate. Today I will be talking about the fruit of the Spirit, goodness. And I could talk about the goodness of God forever. And I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to start talking. But I'm going to start this off with a verse found in Psalms 27:13. And it says, "I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living."
The goodness of God. If I were to describe the goodness of God, which I am, I would say it is unchanging and constant. Because no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, gone through, experienced, no matter what anyone has done to you, all of the above, in the midst of it all, His goodness doesn't change and it doesn't stop. Because I feel like a lot of times in this world, things we experience and go through, and things we don't understand, and the pain and the hurting, we can tend to question His goodness through it all. And that's why I believe it is so important to get that truth rooted down in you, that no matter what, through it all, His goodness, the goodness of God, doesn't change, and it doesn't end, doesn't stop. There's no end to it. And I believe there's a choice. We have a choice of how we can respond to our circumstances and things we go through. We can be overwhelmed by our circumstance, by the pain, by the shame, the guilt, the hurt, things we don't understand, or we can be overwhelmed by His goodness. And I want to be overwhelmed by His goodness. And I also want to give you a couple ways you can choose to respond if you want to see His goodness in the midst of your circumstance or whatever you're dealing with. One response is worship. And I believe worship is something that even if you don't feel like worshiping, it is something when you choose to worship and choose to see His goodness in the midst of your circumstance, things start changing. You start changing. You're no longer seeing through a lens of your circumstance or the pain or the hurting. You're seeing through a lens of the goodness of God. And you start no longer being affected as much by your circumstance because you're being overwhelmed by the goodness of God. And another response is declaring His word out loud. Declare His truth, His promises, His goodness out loud. Declare it to your circumstance, to your pain, the hurting, the shame, whatever it is. Declare His goodness to that. And things start changing. But I have a little story. One time I was going through something and I was seeking after God, and I wanted to see His goodness in the midst of what I was going through. And I was walking in the park. I was actually pushing a little baby in a stroller. And I started picking up flowers along the side of, like on the grass. I would find flowers, and whenever I found a flower, I would hand it to the little baby. And every time I handed him a flower, he would like look at the flower, and then he would like look up at me and just smile and be like, the little flower would make him happy. And when I started seeing him respond that way, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get more flowers and give this baby flowers because it's making me so happy to see the baby smile from the flowers. And after a while, God revealed this thing to me, and He said, this is me to you. He is longing to give us these flowers, which I believe represents His goodness. He's longing to give these to you in what you're going through. He wants to show you His goodness in the midst of everything, because His goodness doesn't change and it doesn't stop, and there's no end. And so just be aware and look for His goodness in your circumstance today, because it's always there and it doesn't change. And that's all I have to say. See ya.
Hey Elevate. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about faithfulness, and I just wanted to read Galatians 5:22 through 23 just to give us context for all the fruits of the Spirit. So it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things." So all of these fruits of the Spirit are proof of God's character, and they're proof of his promises towards us. And one of those promises is faithfulness, his faithfulness towards us. He is always faithful to us. Can we be faithful to him? So when you're struggling to be faithful, God is not condemning you if you haven't been faithful, but he's extending out his hand to you, calling you to live to a higher standard, calling you to be close to him. He's asking you if you will remain faithful and turning to him every time. So I have 3 questions for you guys about faithfulness and a call to a higher standard. Number 1, will you remain faithful when a friend hurts you? Oh, I know. Relationships can be so messy, and they hurt, man. They hurt. And will you choose to work out the situation in love, or will you just reject it, not want to talk about it, and just turn away? Will you be faithful in that relationship? Number 2, will you remain faithful when you go unseen? When you feel like you aren't getting the credit you deserve, when you feel like no one is noticing you, no one even wants to say hi to me, when you feel like you just keep doing good and nobody even cares. It's just you and nobody sees you. No. Will you choose to be faithful and serve even in those places? Who are you serving for? Who are you serving? Are you serving man, or are you serving God? Are you wanting the approval of others in your life, or are you wanting God's approval? Because in the end, all that matters is Jesus. Are you remaining faithful when you're still waiting for your significant other to come along? Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking about that a little bit, but will you wait for them? Will you wait? And will you wait well? Waiting well is different than just waiting. Will you wait well? Will you remain faithful in running to Jesus in your circumstances, even when you don't see how God could be in a situation? Will you remain faithful in turning to him in the good times and in the bad times? Even when you've messed up, even when you feel shame or condemnation, God's not putting that on you. He just wants you to come to him. He just wants to love you right where you are. He's not casting that shame. He's not casting condemnation. He's faithful towards you. Will you be faithful to him? Faithful means loyal, constant, steadfast, and true to one's promise. A word in there is loyal. So I looked up loyal, and it says to stay true to something, not out of obligation, but from the heart. So you want to do this thing because you know in your heart that person. Like, for example, we know the character of God. We know he doesn't want shame on us. He isn't angry at us. So it's easier to be loyal to him because we know his heart for us. Therefore, we want to be loyal and faithful to him. I was thinking about it as I was prepping for this video, and I was thinking there's many men and women in the Bible who are known by their faithfulness, but there's many more stories in the Bible of God being known for his faithfulness. And then I was thinking, if the Bible was being written and they were writing about me, Mackenzie, and what if they were writing about you? What would you be known for? Would you be known for fruits of the Spirit, patience, faithfulness, for your love for one another? Or would you be known by the struggles and being stuck there? So would you be known for being faithful, or would you be known for being hurt and having bitterness towards someone, or not running to Jesus and withdrawing from his presence when it got hard? I don't know about you, but I want to be known for being faithful. I want to be known for letting the Spirit of God move on the inside of me. And I know for some of you that aren't familiar with this, that kind of sounds weird. The Spirit moving on the inside of me, basically that just means that we say yes to God. We open up our hearts and we open up our hands and we say, God, would you do something in me because I'm not strong enough to be all of these things? Would you move in me because I can't seem to be patient on my own. I can't seem to be faithful on my own. And every time we say yes, God does come in. Even if we don't feel it, he still comes in. And as long as we're abiding in his presence and seeking out God, these things will flow in our lives. These things will become a part of who we are. So I urge you guys, choose faithfulness, choose patience, choose self-control, choose all of these good things. But all in all, guys, just allow God's Spirit to move in you. Let the Spirit in. Don't be closed off to it. Just let God in. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope to see all of you super soon.
All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you to all the voices who contributed their message and their voice and to share it with us. It was amazing. All right, guys, next week I'm beginning a brand new series called Revival Starts With You. I am so excited about it. Until then, we'll see you guys next week.